Welcome back to Queens of the Damned, a horror podcast. This week we will be talking about our favorite B-horror movies. Rachel starts out the episode with The Tingler. I follow up with Frankenhooker, and Nikki ends the episode with Teeth. We did want to remind you guys that we still have our giveaway going on. We're probably going to finish that up at the end of this summer, so make sure you go ahead and enter that. We have some really cool movies and fun little trinkets that you guys can win. We're going to have 3 winners. All you have to do is follow us on Podbean or leave us a rating or review on iTunes. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Okay, so for my pick for B movie, I chose a movie with possibly one of the worst titles ever in the history of cinema, and that is The Tingler. So, I mean, it just sounds gross. So The Tingler is a William Castle film, and I'm going to get a little bit more into William Castle later, but he was kind of king of the B movies for a while, and he was definitely a huckster. So The Tingler stars my very favorite horror actor of all time, who someday I will bully the two of you into doing an episode on, and that's Vincent Price. I love Vincent Price so much. Vincent Price plays Dr. Warren Chapin, and he's a medical examiner, and he discovers that, you know, like when you're afraid and you start to feel that tingling in your spine, that's actually due to the growth of a creature called the Tingler. And it's like a parasite attached to the human spine. So, like, when you're afraid, it basically feeds this parasite and it goes stronger and stronger. And then eventually it will crush your spine and kill you. Hence the fact that people sometimes die of fright. So the only way to stop the Tingler is by screaming. So by, like, releasing the tension, right? So, yeah. So Dr. Chapin has this friend named Oliver Higgins, and he owns a movie theater, and his movie theater only shows silent films. And Higgins' wife, Martha, is a deaf mute, and some supernatural things start happening, in their house, and she dies of fright. So Chapin is like, oh my God, this is it. This is my chance to prove the Tingler is real. So he conducts her autopsy and pulls the Tingler out of her spine. So they have the Tingler, like, trapped. And Chapin realizes that his friend Higgins was the murderer. That he killed his wife on purpose. He pretended that their house was haunted. And he scared her to death, knowing that she couldn't scream and relieve pressure from the Tingler because she was a mute. So eventually the Tingler ends up breaking free from the container, and it is released into Higgins' movie theater. It latches onto this woman and she screams until it lets go. And Chapin ends up turning off all the lights in the theater and tells everyone in the theater to scream, which drives the Tingler up into the projection room where they're able to capture it. So Chapin realizes that the only way to get rid of the Tingler is to reinsert it into the host's body. So he reattaches it to Martha, who's dead, onto her spine, and he leaves. And then the husband, the movie theater owner, comes into the room with his wife's body, and all of a sudden the door slams shut and locks itself, and the Tingler basically it takes over Martha's body and causes her to sit up from the operating table and stares at her husband. And he's so scared that he's unable to scream, and that's how the movie ends. And yes, so there's not much plot to this movie. I mean, clearly, that took about 30 seconds to explain the whole plot. William Castle movies were light on plot. So I'm going to get a little bit into William Castle. So he was kind of a no one from nowhere. I mean, he was like a high school dropout, and he went to go see Dracula when he was a kid, and he was just like entranced by Dracula. So he gets into films, and he kind of does some mainstream films, but he's really not enjoying it. He's not interested. So he starts to make his own independent films. So his first movie is called Macabre, and he makes it by mortgaging his house. That's how he's able to afford it. And he comes up with this gimmick, and this is what he becomes known for, these gimmicks, where every person who goes to see the movie in the movie theater is given a certificate for $1,000 life insurance policy from Lloyd's of London in case they should die of fright during the film.
That is awesome.
And then he also stations nurses in the movie theater lobbies with hearses parked outside the theater.
Oh my god.
And so Macabre ends up being this huge hit. And so he becomes known for these like stunts. Okay, so the stunt for the Tingler was this thing called Percepto. So Percepto were these buzzers. They were like old engines from like World War II airplane wings, like these small motors, and he attached them under the seats of random seats in the movie theater. And this was really only done in like larger theaters. So like here in Chicago, they would have done it, like in bigger cities. So at the point in the movie when the Tingler is loose in the movie theater, an audience member in the actual movie theater where you are viewing the scene where the Tingler is loose in a movie theater, an audience member would be a plant. And she would scream, and then she would faint. And paramedics would come in with the stretcher, and they would take her out. And all of a sudden, the screen, from the screen would be the voice of Vincent Price, who would mention that someone had just fainted. And he would say, ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated, please remain calm. And then the movie would start again. And then all of a sudden the film would pretend break, and you would see the Tingler crawling across the movie theater screen. And then all of the lights in the theater would go out, and the voice of Vincent Price would play again, and he would say, ladies and gentlemen, please do not panic, but scream for your lives. The Tingler is loose in this theater. And that would cue the projectionist to activate the Percepto buzzers, which would give the audience members sitting in those seats a jolt. So it was like the Tingler was crawling on your seat.
Oh my gosh.
And people would scream, and screams would start coming from like the speakers. So everyone in the theater would be screaming. And then after a minute, the lights would come back up, and Vincent Price's voice would play, and he would tell everyone, the Tingler was gone and the danger is over. And then the movie would resume and end. Yeah. Great. This was what this guy was known for. My dad actually saw, not this movie, but he saw the House on Haunted Hill. So back in the day, they used to like reissue movies, in the theater, because how else would you see it? I mean, no one had VHS or anything. Mm-hmm. So at one point in the original House on Haunted Hill, there's a skeleton that comes out of a vat of acid and chases a character. And so in larger theaters, and my dad is from Chicago, they would have a skeleton that would fly on a wire over the audience at that time. And when my dad saw this movie, it was a double feature, right? And this was the first feature. And he and his friend got so scared when that skeleton floated over that they got out of their seats, they ran out of the theater, and they ran all the way home. Oh yeah, and they were probably like 10, but yeah.
Why aren't movies like that anymore?
I know. So he would just do this kind of fun thing. Like, he did the original version of 13 Ghosts. And I can't remember from the remake, but in the original, in order to see the ghost, you have to wear these, like, special glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you went to the theater, you got handed out the glasses, which were really just, like, 3D glasses.
Yeah.
And it would, you know, in the movie, when the character put the glasses on, you had to put your glasses on so that you could see the ghosts. Yeah, I mean, he was great. And then finally, like, his last movie actually was, he again mortgaged his home to make Rosemary's Baby. He is the one who bought the rights to Rosemary's Baby and insisted upon hiring Roman Polanski to direct it, which obviously was a great choice. So in the end, he kind of went a little bit like mainstream, but that was really his only mainstream horror movie. Everything else were these terrible B movies. I mean, they're not good. Like, I've seen a lot of them, and they're not good, but they're all a lot of fun.
So I told you that I fell asleep while I was watching The Tingler, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love how that movie starts, and it kind of made me feel like they were making fun of themselves a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, they weren't actually trying to be serious with it. They were, like, you know, kind of making fun of themselves.
Oh, no. I mean, they know this movie is bad. Mm-hmm. There's actually one point where they, I can't remember why he does it. I think it's because it's the only way he can see the Tingler at first, but Vincent Price's character takes acid.
Oh my god!
Yes.
I need to rewatch this.
Yeah, there's a point where he takes acid, and I mean, he's like, I mean, the most stereotypical version of, like, an acid trip that you could have. I mean, he's like pulling at his tie, and he's like trying to get out the window, but it's nailed shut, and like his eyes are like going in circles. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Oh my god,
it's ridiculous.
That's great,
but it's so good.
What year was this made again?
Good. 1959.
Okay.
So acid was legal at this point, and they were still using it in, like, medical tests. And so I guess the guy who wrote the movie had heard about acid.
Clearly, this is someone who's never done acid. Has only.
I don't know. All I heard,
yeah.
all I could find was that he actually heard about it from Aldous Huxley,
of course,
who wrote Brave New World.
Yeah. And
so he decided to work it into the script, but I couldn't find if he had actually, like, taken acid. But this was this movie basically kind of cemented Vincent Price as this B-movie horror actor, and this is when he really started to make some money making horror movies.
I love it already. I
so
haven't
good.
even seen it.
So good. I recommend any of the William Castle movies. They're all really, really, really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch it. Because what I saw, I enjoyed, and I didn't fall asleep because I was bored by it. I was actually having a lot of fun with it. It was just an unfortunate time for me to be watching a movie. But I remember there was one scene where it was like, the bathtub was bright red.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved that visually, since the whole movie was black and white.
Yep. That's when Evelyn, the deaf-mute wife, is being almost like tortured to death. I mean, scared to death. And she's in the bathtub, and she sees blood flowing from the sink. And then she watches, like, the hand coming out of the bathtub. Mm-hmm. And the way that they did that, I actually have that in my notes, too. The way that they made that scene is they painted the set. So they filmed it in color, right? Because you could only film in color or black and white at this time. You couldn't, like, film it in black and white and then add the color later. So they filmed it in color, but they painted the set white, black, and gray. And they painted the actress gray to make it look like it was black and white, and that's how they got the color, because they didn't have the money to go back in and add color later.
That's so
these
cool.
These movies are all made for like $5.
I can't
But
believe
exactly.
it was less expensive to paint the set and the actress than it was to actually have that altered. That's insane.
Yes, and I like how they had to be kind of ingenious with this kind of thing, because they didn't have any money.
Yeah, filmmaking was so much different back then in general. Like,
it's so good. It's and most of his movies are out on DVD. They are releasing, for people who care, because I do. They are releasing box sets of all of his movies. There's like, I think they just have like Castle Volume 1 right now, and then there's gonna be like a Castle Volume 2, I assume. But yeah, his movies are a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun. And anything with Vincent Price is like amazing for me. So
that was
watch
a great
William
way to
Castle
kick us
movies.
Off.
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't know if anybody can beat that shit.
Well, I don't know. My movie was kind of insane.
Wait, mine has... Okay, never mind.
I think we all picked really fun ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
really fucked up stuff.
I picked Frankenhooker, which was directed...
Yeah,
crazy.
I love the title.
Sorry.
I know.
Love
I know.
it.
It was directed by Frank Henenlotter, and it came out in 1990. Before I picked this movie, I had to research it, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to be picking something that was really sexist and awful.
That is Franken sex worker to you, Miranda.
My bad. Oh my gosh. But it ended up being surprisingly a great movie. I think it's better than it should be, to be honest, because the whole premise of it is just kind of ridiculous. So it's about Jeffrey Franken, his wife, or his fiance, I'm sorry, Elizabeth Shelley, the names, of course. She's killed in a freak lawnmower accident.
As you are.
Like you do.
God. This movie's so ridiculous. So Jeffrey Franken is like this crazy, obviously like Frankenstein medical doctor weird guy. He's been kicked out of medical school, or not kicked out. He hasn't been able to get into medical school. He's tried 3 times, and he's been denied every time. And he works for a power company, but everyone seems to think that he's a medical doctor. So he basically decides, after his wife is basically chopped up by a lawnmower, that he has to rebuild her. But because some of her parts are missing, he decides he has to either dig up dead bodies somewhere, or he's going to have to kill someone. So, of course, he decides he has to kill someone. And this quickly turns into not just him trying to, bring back his wife. It turns into him trying to build the perfect wife. So, he determines that he's basically going to find a hooker, the hooker with the perfect body. He's going to kill her, and then he's going to use her body parts to bring Elizabeth back. So, it's this whole thing, him trying to get the perfect hooker. Oh god, I'm not gonna go through all of it, but I have to say, all of these hookers that he meets are addicted to crack, and so he decides that he's gonna create like a super crack, and that's how he's gonna kill them. And he does.
Okay.
Yes. And so he has all of these women in a hotel room with him. And this scene is just, it's so... The moment that he gets these women into the hotel room to the minute that he leaves is just utter insanity. And I'm pretty sure my notes turned into, what the fuck? So there's this whole sequence of him, measuring all of these women, measuring all of their body parts, and it's really weird and kind of uncomfortable to watch. But after that, he realizes, okay, I can't kill anyone. I can't do this. He can't handle it. And then the women start freaking out, thinking that he's not going to pay them. They get a hold of his bag, and they find the crack in it. Needless to say, they all decide they need to start smoking it against him screaming, "No, don't do that. It's gonna kill you." And of course, then there's this whole sequence of these naked women dancing around, doing drugs, some of them kissing each other. It's a very, like, eye roll scene. But, oh my god. You guys need to watch this movie. They literally just, like, spontaneously combust. They just explode. Like, there's lightning. Well, not lightning. There's, like, fireworks and a loud explosion noise and everything. It is just, it's ridiculous. All of these women, probably like 7 or 8 women in this room, they all just start exploding. They're basically just mannequins that have like bombs on them. It's the most ridiculous thing. Oh my god. But then he just like collects body parts and he leaves. And he goes and he rebuilds his wife. So by the time she's rebuilt and she comes back, she basically has the personality of every woman that she is made of. But all the women are hookers, so the only thing she can say are like the things that the hookers said when they were on the streets. So she's walking around and she's saying stuff like, "Hey, you want to have a good time?" God. And like stuff like that. That's all she can say. But whenever the men like try to sleep with her or they touch her or anything like that, she makes them explode.
Oh my.
It's actually kind of satisfying. And then she ends up with her head halfway off. And so Jeffrey has to put her head back on. And when he does that, she comes back to life. But she's actually Elizabeth. And I don't know if I want to give away the ending of this movie. I kind of want to because it's so ridiculous. I guess if you haven't seen this movie, just like skip this because I want to talk about it. So when he actually brings her back, she's at first amazed that he managed to do it. And then she looks down and she realizes this is not my body. Like, where's my body? This is like a million other bodies put together. And Jeffrey ends up being killed by a character that I didn't mention. And Elizabeth brings him back, but he is attached to a woman's body. And it pretty much ends with him realizing that and him screaming.
Wow.
Yes. So with all of like the awful things that happen in this movie, it actually doesn't make a point. It's a B movie. It doesn't have like a message or anything, but it really does some super clever things that I wouldn't expect a B movie to do. It really is focused on like body shaming issues, because Elizabeth in the beginning, she isn't even a big girl whatsoever. She's a little curvy, but all of her friends keep telling her she needs to lose weight, and I guess Jeffrey had stapled her stomach at one point. So a lot of it does have to do with like body shaming issues. Jeffrey is like this really creepy, disgusting guy. I'm pretty sure that his first name is Jeffrey. Well, I'm not pretty sure. His first name is Jeffrey because they're trying to liken him to Jeffrey Dahmer. There are a lot of scenes where he looks like Jeffrey Dahmer. He just keeps saying things that are extremely questionable. You're not really supposed to like him whatsoever. I don't even think you're really supposed to feel bad for him or anything the whole time. You're really supposed to dislike him and his attempt to, like, rebuild the perfect woman. Because at one point when he's working on her body, he says, "I can make you the centerfold of the century. Just need the right parts." So, like, she didn't have the right parts. She couldn't be a centerfold the way she was, but he has the perfect eye, so he can put her together in a way that's going to be perfect. Wow. And when he's going over, like, his notes, he's worrying about how much voltage to use, and he doesn't want to use too much because then it's going to give her spider veins or chicken legs. So all of it is so focused on what the perfect woman is and how to create this perfect woman. And then there is one point when he's talking about the hookers and he's trying to decide if he should give them this crack or not, because he has morality issues throughout the movie as well. He has moments where he feels really guilty, but he says, "I'm just placing a lethal type of crack in front of them. No one is holding a gun to their head. If they don't want to take it, they just have to say no." Which very clearly, when you hear that, it sounds problematic. It's an absolutely ridiculous movie, but it ends up, I don't want to call it a feminist movie, but I think it has a lot of, like, feminist undertones to it, because it's definitely not trying to, like, create a meaning or say, like, body shaming is bad, but it makes points that you really wouldn't expect a B-movie to make whatsoever. So yeah, that's Frankenhooker. You should watch it. So much fun.
That's cool. Where is it? Where can you watch it?
I actually got it from Amazon. I streamed it from Amazon because you can't get it on the streaming services I have.
You know, I think that I've seen it. I think it's come up on my Amazon Prime before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should watch this movie. And I was kind of like, why would I watch this?
Yeah. It's
but
really
if it's
good.
good.
Yeah, and I first heard about it because of the guys on the horror show talked about it, I think.
Okay.
I don't remember. And I was like, oh god, that sounds like something I should see. And I didn't watch it until now because I kept forgetting about it.
I feel like my movie didn't have that much plot, and that movie has a lot of plot.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot happens.
No, not in a bad way.
Well, and this movie is so short. It's not even an hour and a half.
But they cram it sounds like they cram a lot into that hour and a half.
Yeah, they really do. So much happens. So much. And there's so much that I left out when I was explaining it.
That's crazy. I love that. And that's another kind of really fun B-movie, is where it's like, you know, if this had been made by like a studio, like an editor would have got in there and been like, we're gonna cut all this. But because it wasn't, they're like, just do it.
Yeah.
We'll do that too. Just throw that in.
Yep.
I love that. I think that's fun.
Yeah, well, and one other thing that I really liked about this is the character of Jeffrey is, I feel like especially now, is a character that we recognize just in society in general. He's like that, like when you're in high school, he's like that creepy white boy who has really weird interests, and like he's like the nice guy kid who views women really weird, but he gets away with all of it, you know, because his parents adore him and none of the teachers will do anything, but he makes everyone uncomfortable and he's kind of like a loose cannon. That's pretty much who Jeffrey is. I don't know. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is incredibly familiar.
I feel like we've been here before.
Yeah. It's so I just looked it up just to see like the poster, and it says that it's very loosely inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Yes, we call that an appropriation.
Well, and I think it's kind of clever too, the way they did it, because Victor was looking to make the perfect man, and so here you've got someone that's trying to create the perfect woman, and then they use like all the implications of that as well.
Yeah,
I thought it was super clever.
Well, I'll watch it.
I don't know if I could get through it, to be honest.
It's so fun. It really is.
It's fun to hear you describe it, but I just don't know. I don't know.
I feel like it would be fun for like, it's Halloween, it's 1 a.m.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. But to me, that's when B movies are the most fun.
Exactly.
Like, it's just like a lazy Sunday, and you're just kind of laying around the house, and it's like, oh, let's see what's on.
Oh, and I did want to mention, the director, Frank Henenlotter, is also the director of Basket Case, which I have not seen.
I love Basket Case.
Yeah, but it has a bit of a cult following, so...
Oh my god, I didn't know it's the same guy.
Yeah.
I love Basket Case.
I'm pretty
Is
sweet.
Frankenhooker a cult movie, too?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
No.
Basket Case definitely is.
Yeah.
Oh, it says, if you search it on Google, cult film, splatter film. So it must have some sort of cult follow. I don't know.
That's interesting, because
it was
I haven't...
made in the 90s.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone talk about it besides Sean and Joe on the horror show, so I don't know. Maybe it does, but I haven't met any of those people.
I'm looking at all these images from the film, but they're all out of context. And I don't know what's happening right now.
That's how you feel the whole time you're watching the movie, even though you know the context. You're like, what is happening? What am I seeing right now?
Oh, that's hysterical. I'll probably watch this. It looks hilarious. This looks like it would be a really good Halloween costume.
It would. She has the pointiest bra.
Yeah.
She does.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because he goes through all this effort to make this, like, extremely amazing body, but, like some of the body parts are, like, almost blackened and everything because of the explosions, and so, like, none of the body parts are even, like, a normal coloration except for her head.
There's a gif of one of the women exploding, and it's... What the hell?
It's
Wow.
so
Oh my
good.
god.
It's so bad, but it's so good.
Good choice.
Thanks.
Nikki, what did you pick?
I'm sorry, I'm still looking at all these images. Okay. I chose Teeth.
Yay!
And there's a lot of B horror films to choose from, but I chose that one because it kind of straddles the line between B movie and horror comedy, but it still contains a lot of elements of B films. Like, it had a $2 million budget that it barely remade when it was released. It used camp a lot and exploitation, though it didn't really surround women as is most common. So I'll just go through the plot a little bit. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on it, though, because it's a film you have to experience. So Teeth follows a teenage girl whose name is Dawn, and she has made a promise to engage in abstinence until marriage, and she is part of one of those groups, and she's actually in more of a leadership type position. She does speeches and stuff. But then she meets this guy named Toby, and Hale Appleman plays Toby. If that sounds familiar to you, he is Elliot in The Magicians, and I really like that actor.
Uh-huh.
And she starts having, like, marriage fantasies of him, and they start fooling around, and he rapes her. And upon being raped by Toby, she discovers that she has a vagina dentata, which is a toothy vagina that will amputate anything that's inserted into it unwillingly. Handy. And so after this happens, obviously Toby's dead. Dawn suffers a period of extreme fear about her capability to harm others when she watches divers find Toby's body 3 days later. And she soon starts to actually embrace her sexuality, though. She's just so tired of this. She's just surrounded by terrible men. Just terrible people. The only good person is her stepfather. And she starts to use this. In the film, it's kind of framed as this evolutionary power. It's kind of hinted in her classroom, like her teacher's talking. Like it always happens in movies, her teacher's talking and she's like saying something that's completely relevant to the plot of the whole movie. Her teacher's talking about how the rattlesnake adapted so it wouldn't get stepped on, and one day maybe a snake with a rattle was born. And so they kind of frame it as this evolutionary power that she's developed to stop rapists, rather than the regular myth, which is like the woman has to be conquered. The woman with the vagina dentata has to be conquered by a hero, a man who will like detooth her or whatever. But she starts to believe this. And some men that attempt to rape Dawn include her gynecologist, who loses 4 fingers and then declines to explain to anyone why it happened. It's awesome. And this guy named Ryan, who's a classmate, and he brags over the phone about having sex with her while they're having sex. Not a good idea. So he also loses his dick. And he also assaults her while she's unconscious after he gives her 2 sedatives, which isn't like really remarked as much upon in the film. And for people today, that's the part of the film that hasn't really aged well, because if it was truly a defense mechanism, she's being raped while she's asleep and he's having sex with her while she's asleep. So technically, her body should have automatically engaged its teeth, but it doesn't. So, but this is how exploitation is used in the film. Rather than focusing on Dawn's body and her sexuality, it really focuses on the traumatized bodies of these men after their dicks get cut off. And it's like this element of like so ridiculously horrible that it's funny. I don't even know how to explain it. But at the end of the film, after all this happens to her, Dawn decides to hitchhike across the country, and she trusts that her teeth will defend her from anyone who attempts to rape or assault her in the future. So my memory of this film is like, when it was released, it was the butt of a bunch of jokes because it sounds insane. Like, explaining this movie, it's insane, but it's actually a really, really good film, and it addresses just how messed up rape culture is, basically. It takes the monstrous feminine and it turns it on its head. This movie has really had a lot of pushback, from conception to trying to make the movie to then reception afterwards. So some of the problems that people have with the movie, I ran across in this woman named Siren Kale, her article in Broadly. She says that feminist critics were all over it, some in good ways and some in not so good ways. One prominent feminist critic I emailed for comment declined to speak about Teeth on account of it being a male-written, male-directed film. The director's name was Mitchell Lichtenstein. Alexandra Heller Nicholas, who's a really, really popular feminist film critic, devoted a chapter to Teeth in her 2010 book, and she feels similarly. She said, just because you're making a movie about the monstrous feminine doesn't give you a free pass into the feminist horror film canon. Teeth is a great concept for a film, but the final product feels less concerned about women and their bodies than it does about what women's bodies can do to men. Okay, I disagree, like, pretty much blatantly with what she said. I'm a little disappointed. I expected more from a feminist film critic. To get up in arms because a man made a film about the monstrous feminine. First of all, yeah, it was made by a man, but the producer was a woman, and she had tons of responsibility in this film, and tons of say. And second of all, I don't see the problem with it being a warning to men that women won't put up with it forever. I don't think that's exactly what the film is saying. I think it's not supposed to be taken literally, of course, but I don't see the problem with saying, okay, men are scared of women's sexuality and men make women monsters. Well, then the woman says, okay, fine, I'm a monster. Be scared of me. Respect me. I don't see a problem in some cases. It depends on how it's framed in the story, but for me, this one pretty much hit it on the head. But I read this article by Casey Ryan Kelly, and she makes a case in favor of Teeth as a feminist horror film in her article, which I will post a link to on our blog. And she addresses how Teeth is an extremely multi-layered argument against rape culture and misogyny, even noting that it takes an eco-feminist bent. If you guys noticed, I didn't notice this the first or the second time I watched the film. So Dawn rides her bike to school every day by this nuclear power plant that we assume that her mom is sick because of. And her mother is in bed most of the movie until she finally dies, basically from like radiation poisoning or pollution or something. And it really links with like this destruction of the environment to like misogyny and hatred towards women. Like, it's literally killing women. Misogyny is literally killing women. So that's a really intricate sort of consideration for a B movie to make. And Casey Ryan Kelly also states that the camp elements of the film are extremely self-aware. So like all of the like crazy, I can't believe this is happening, violent stuff, it helps to subvert the usually male gaze of the horror film viewer, and it allows the monstrous feminine to gaze back. The last shot of the movie is Dawn looking from this man who wants to assault her, who won't let her out of his car, into the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and just she starts cracking this smile. And so instead of us in horror films seeing from the point of view of the killer or the assaulter, we're seeing from the point of view of this person who's defending herself. And whatever you think about Teeth, I ran across this neat little anecdote that it inspired this South African doctor whose name was Sinette Ehlers to design an anti-rape device called Rape-X, which, have you guys heard of this?
I think so.
So it actually has teeth, and the teeth, it's a female condom. It has teeth, and the teeth point upwards towards the cervix, which would allow a foreign object to enter but not leave. So it's kind of like the most evil Chinese finger trap you would ever imagine, and way more painful. So ostensibly, the perpetrator in a rape wouldn't be able to remove the device from his penis without serious injury, and they would have to go to the hospital to get it removed, and immediate proof that you raped somebody. But this product, it hasn't ever actually been put on the market. Maybe someday. I don't know. I could see... and there's some parts of me that think it's like a great idea, and some parts of me that go, what if you forgot you had it in?
Yeah.
Like, or
well, and also, like, I feel like you have to wear it all the time. Because,
You'd
like,
have to wear it all the time.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't lead to any kind of spontaneity. Like, let's say you meet a guy at a bar, and you do want to hook up, right? And you go back to your house, and you're like, give me a second, let me take out this bear trap in my vagina, and then we can start. Like, I feel like that would just...
I think,
the man would leave.
There's the Nuva ring. There's the Nuva ring, which you can have intercourse with, but a lot of women prefer to take it out, too, before they have sex. So it's, like, no different than that. As long as you know you have it in. Like, oh God, what if you'd forgotten? That would just be...
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. It's not like, oh, give me a moment, sir, I just met. Like...
Right.
But yeah, like, there's a few stories that I came across of, like, how hard it was for them to get the film made and all of the pushback that they got. That kind of just proves Teeth's point. That proves that rape culture is pervasive and that misogyny is pervasive. The director said this. So I had a manager at the time who said, don't show the script to anyone. Anyone who reads this will not read anything else you write. And he said, why? And they said, well, actually, he said, the movie industry is still run by men, I guess, and they don't like the idea of seeing dicks get cut off. So Teeth ended up being made with completely private funding. It was turned down by all studios it was pitched to, even the European ones, which are usually more okay about sex in films. And then once the film was going forward and they had all that private funding, getting sets was hard. The director and the producer, they met with a film commissioner who was going to show them examples of the 3 different sets they needed. And however, the director says that in between showing us that morning and coming to collect us that evening, he'd read the script. Not only was he not going to help us, but he was calling all the places we'd been, saying it was a pornographic shoot and not to let us shoot there. So it was really, really hard to get it made, which just kind of just hammered home everything that the movie's trying to say. So, but there's kind of hope at the end of the tunnel for Teeth. I hope the director and the producer are pitching a Dexter-esque TV series that picks up where Teeth left off, where Dawn is hitchhiking around the country and using her gift to get rid of men who would assault women. And I would really love to see that made so much. They said it's really difficult, though, because people still don't want to see a TV show about a vagina, and I don't know. I really hope that it does get made, though, because I think after Handmaid's Tale and stuff, that people might be more willing to watch something themed that way.
Well, we also had American Horror Story Coven. Taissa Farmiga's character, I think. She didn't have, like, the teeth, but...
No, she just killed them.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
People are probably going to be more open to the concept because of that as well.
I hope. And the movie's 11 years old now.
That's crazy.
Which seems... Yeah. Seems like yesterday.
It does.
But I think it's back up on Netflix. That was really the only place you could see it for a while. It was really expensive to buy on DVD. And then they took it off Netflix. And now they finally put it back on, of course, after I bought the DVD. So...
Yay.
Go watch
it's
it
such
if you
a good
haven't
movie.
seen it. It's actually...
It is good.
I remember when it first came out, I think I was in high school. It might have been middle school. I can't remember, but I remember my guy friends coming up to me and being like, Miranda, you like horror movies, don't you? I'm like, yeah. Oh, you should watch this movie on Netflix. This woman has teeth in her vagina. It was just the dumbest thing. You know,
That was really just the way
Yeah.
it was described all throughout, because I was in, like, early high school when that came out. And that was how it was. Oh, the teeth in the vagina. Well, that and Rubber were described as if they were the same exact type of movie, which...
No.
No.
Good choice.
I love that movie.
And it's actually, like, it is a B movie, but I feel like it has the potential, maybe is actually, like, a legitimately good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just considered a B movie because it
flopped.
Was a failure in every... Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the reviews being that horrible. Like, I remember when it came out, and I remember, like, Roger Ebert really liked it.
He did. He gave it 4 stars.
Yeah, but I love Roger Ebert, so I don't think it got, like, horrific reviews, but it definitely did not get raves.
Yeah. I think the producer said the problem was that Lionsgate fucked up the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't market the way that they suggested it and marketed it as a straight horror film, which kind of just left out the nuance of what the film's about. At the same time, if asked, I would classify it as a horror film, so I don't know.
And I almost feel like, how would you market this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in what way could you possibly market it to explain what it is without... I don't know. I think that Lionsgate may have been in a little bit of, like, a conundrum. I mean, like, how do you market it?
The producer said that she had suggested ways, but she didn't specify in the particular article I was reading what those were. So she did have some ideas about marketing that were ignored.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what those were. And I can't guess.
I was about to say,
either.
I couldn't imagine a way to market it effectively.
Yeah, you kind of almost have to have the audience know what they're coming into.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you're just gonna go, oh, a drama about a young girl struggling with her sexuality and whether or not she should have sex before she gets married. And then it's like, ooh, by the way, her vagina has teeth.
Right.
Too.
So to me, it's almost like you either market it like that and then people are mad because they're expecting this, like, serious drama. Or you market it as a horror film, but then people are mad because it's not exactly, like, you know, gory, just a gory movie. So I don't know how you would market it.
You know, sometimes things make a resurgence, and I kind of feel like if it's going to, it will soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I already think it's kind of been picked up by the people who would want to see it as something to be respected in the genre.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the fact, like, getting it to wider audiences is... that's difficult because nobody wants to think about, or see vaginas for some reason. And that they even actually address that in the film. Like, the picture of the penis in their health textbook is there, but the vagina's covered up or the vulva is covered up by a giant sticker.
Right.
And that was a real thing that happened during the Bush administration. Wait, was it during the Bush administration? I know the abstinence education, quote unquote, was...
2007 would have been, like, near the end. Yeah, because Obama was elected in 2008.
But, you know, this stuff continues today. It's not... especially with Trump, but...
Mm-hmm. Good picks, everybody.
We had, like, weird sexual references in all of our movies.
We did. We did.
Yeah. I just Googled B movies and I saw Frankenhooker and I was like, my time has come.
This is it.
You were like, now or never,
this is my
Miranda.
chance, finally.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at QOTD Podcast, on Facebook at facebook.com/QOTD Podcast, Tumblr at queensofthedamnpodcast.tumblr.com, and YouTube at Queens of the Damn Podcast.
Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, and subscribe to us on Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and TuneIn Radio. You can also follow us on our blog, queensofthedampodcast.wordpress.com, to find bonus content and extra information on our episodes.
If you would like to donate to our show, you can find us at patreon.com/QOTD podcast, where you can receive special perks as a listener for becoming a monthly patron. If you would like to make a one-time donation, you can send it to qotdpodcast@gmail.com on PayPal. Donations are greatly appreciated. They improve the quality of the show and go towards the production of future merch along with a new logo.
We'll see you next week.
So it says, Frankenhooker's initial release was delayed because of difficulty obtaining an R rating from the MPAA. The director recalls that one representative of the ratings body actually said in a phone call to the production company's secretary, "Congratulations, you're the first film rated S." And she said, "S? For sex?" And they said, "No, S for shit."
Oh my god! Whoa!
Oh my god! Oh, that's hysterical. Oh, that's a good line. I'm gonna have to remember that.